Admiral Kevin Price stood on the bridge of his warship, the Starfall, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. He was a tall man, with gray hair and tired eyes. 40 years in the fleet had taught him many things, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to see. The year was 2347. Humanity had spread across 17 star systems. They had built colonies, made friends with alien species, and created a peaceful life among the stars. Most aliens respected humans. Some even liked them. But the Velthari Dominion was different. The Velthari were a reptilian species with green scales and cold yellow eyes. They had conquered dozens of worlds and believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. They looked at humans and saw weak creatures who talked too much about peace and friendship. To them, humans were prey pretending to be predators. Kevin received the emergency call at exactly 0300 hours. His communications officer, a young woman named Amy Chen, turned to him with fear in her eyes. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from Meridian 4, she said. Her voice was shaking. Meridian 4 was a human colony world. 10 million people lived there. Farmers, teachers, children, families. Normal people living normal lives on a planet far from Earth. Kevin walked to the communications station. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life. Commander Lisa Hartwell appeared. She was stationed on the orbital defense platform above Meridian 4. Her face was covered in sweat and blood. Behind her, alarms were screaming. "Admiral, the Velthari have blockaded the planet," Lisa said. Her voice was calm, but Kevin could see the terror in her eyes. "They came with over 200 warships. We have 12. They're not responding to any communication. They're just waiting." Kevin felt his stomach drop. Waiting for what? Before Lisa could answer, the transmission cut off. A new signal replaced it. This one was broadcasting on every frequency in the galaxy. Every species, every world, every ship would see what came next. The face of Sovereign Krathvol filled the screen. He was the supreme leader of the Velthari Dominion. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his eyes burned with cruel intelligence. When he spoke, his voice was like stones grinding together. "Attention, creatures of the galaxy," Krathvol said. "Today, we will teach the humans a lesson. They believe that kindness makes them strong. They believe that peace makes them safe. They are wrong." Kevin's blood turned to ice. "Watch closely," Krathvol continued. "Watch what happens to those who are weak." The image changed. Now the screen showed Meridian 4 from orbit. Beautiful blue oceans and green continents. Then it zoomed in on one of the cities. Kevin recognized it as New Hope, the colony's capital. 500,000 people lived there. Velthari soldiers marched through the streets. They dragged people from their homes, men, women, children. They lined them up in the main square, and then, while the entire galaxy watched, they began killing them. Kevin could not move. He could not speak. He could only watch as the Velthari executed innocent humans one by one. The screams filled his bridge. His crew members were crying. Some fell to their knees, but nobody could look away. The broadcast continued for 6 hours. 6 hours of death. 6 hours of horror. The Velthari killed all 10 million colonists on Meridian 4. They made it slow. They made it painful. And they made sure everyone in the galaxy saw every moment. On Earth, people watched from their homes. Parents covered their children's eyes. But the children could still hear the screams. In schools, teachers turned off the screens, but students had already seen too much. In government buildings, leaders sat in stunned silence, tears running down their faces. Sovereign Krathvol appeared again at the end. His scales were splattered with human blood. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Let this be a message to all species," he said. "The Velthari Dominion does not fear the weak. We do not respect the soft. Humanity asked for peace. We have given them death. If any human dares to respond, we will do this to every one of your pathetic colonies." The transmission ended. Kevin stood alone on his bridge. His crew had collapsed around him, broken by what they had witnessed. He thought about the people of Meridian 4. The farmers who grew food to feed their families, the teachers who educated children, the doctors who healed the sick, the children who had done nothing wrong except be born human, all dead, all murdered for entertainment. Something changed inside Kevin at that moment. Something cold and hard settled into his heart. He had spent his entire career believing in diplomacy. He had believed that peace was always possible. He had believed that even the cruelest species could be reasoned with. He did not believe that anymore. Kevin walked to his command chair and sat down. His hands were steady now. His voice was calm when he spoke. "Contact Earth Command," he said. "Tell them I await orders." Amy looked up at him. Her face was red from crying. "Sir, what are we going to do?" Kevin stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Velthari were celebrating. They thought they had broken humanity. They thought they had won. They were wrong. "We're going to wait," Kevin said quietly. "And then we're going to show them what happens when you hurt our people." Across human space, the same cold feeling spread through billions of hearts. Mothers who had lost no one felt the rage of mothers who had lost everything. Soldiers who had never fired a weapon felt ready to die for revenge. Scientists who spent their lives creating things began thinking about how to destroy things. Humanity had always been kind. They had always been patient. They had always chosen peace when war was possible. But now, for the first time in their history among the stars, humans were ready to show the galaxy what they truly were. Not weak, not soft, not prey. They were something far more dangerous. They were a species that had finally been pushed too far, and the Velthari had no idea what was coming. The galaxy expected humanity to break. Every species that had watched the massacre waited for the humans to cry, to beg, to surrender. That was what always happened. When the Velthari crushed a species, that species crumbled. They sent diplomats to negotiate. They offered money and resources. They did whatever the Velthari demanded. But humanity did something different. Humanity went silent. In the 3 days after the massacre, not a single human government made a public statement. No crying leaders appeared on screens. No angry speeches filled the airwaves. The humans simply stopped talking. This confused the galaxy. This terrified the galaxy. President Daniel Morrison sat in the Great Hall of the United Earth Council. Around him were the leaders of every human nation, every colony, every faction that had ever disagreed on anything. These people had argued for centuries. They had fought wars against each other. They had never once agreed on anything. Until now. Daniel was a quiet man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. People had elected him because he believed in peace. He had spent his entire career building bridges between enemies. He had never raised his voice in anger. But when he stood to address the council, something was different. His eyes were not kind anymore. They were cold and empty, like the void between stars. "I will say this only once," Daniel said. His voice was soft, but every person in the room heard him clearly. "What we do next, we do together. There will be no debate. There will be no disagreement. We will move as one species, with one purpose, toward one goal." He paused and looked at the faces around him. Leaders who had hated each other for generations nodded in agreement. "The Velthari believe we are weak," Daniel continued. "They believe that our kindness means we cannot fight. They believe that our love for peace means we fear war. They are wrong. We chose peace because we understood what would happen if we chose war. We held back our true nature because we did not want to become monsters." He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they burned with cold fire. "They have taken that choice from us. Now we will show them what we are capable of." On the moon, deep inside a secret research facility, Dr. Claire Wen received a message. She was a small woman with black hair and tired eyes. She had spent 15 years working on theoretical physics, exploring ideas that most scientists thought were impossible. Her project was called Helios. It was a weapon unlike anything humanity had ever created. In theory, it could cause a star to collapse in on itself, destroying everything in that solar system. Claire had hoped it would never be built. She had hoped it would remain just an idea, a warning of what could be done but never should be. The message was simple. It came directly from President Morrison. Complete Project Helios in 30 days. You will have unlimited resources. Whatever you need, ask, and it will be given. Do not fail. Claire stared at the message for a long time. She thought about the 10 million people who had died on Meridian 4. She thought about the children who had been murdered while their parents watched. She thought about what it would mean to build a weapon that could kill billions. Then she gathered her team and began to work. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Torres received orders of a different kind. He was the commander of a small reconnaissance ship called the Horizon. Ryan was a young man with dark skin and a quick smile. He had joined the fleet because he loved exploring new worlds. He had never wanted to fight anyone. His orders came from Admiral Kevin Price himself. You will take your ship deep into Velthari space, the Admiral said through the video screen. His face was like stone. You will map their homeworld. You will identify every military installation, every population center, every piece of infrastructure. You will send this information back to us, and then you will return home. Ryan understood what the Admiral was not saying. This was a suicide mission. The chances of surviving a trip into the heart of the Velthari Dominion were almost zero. Yes, sir, Ryan said without hesitation. When do I leave? Immediately. As Ryan prepared his ship, the Velthari celebrated their victory. Sovereign Krathval held feasts in his palace. His generals laughed about how easily the humans had broken. They made jokes about the screaming colonists. They planned which human colony they would attack next. The soft ones have learned their place, Krathval announced to his court. They are hiding in their burrows like frightened animals. Perhaps we will let them live as our slaves. They might be useful for simple labor. His generals laughed. None of them noticed that human ships were quietly withdrawing from Velthari space. None of them noticed that human trade routes were closing. None of them noticed that humanity was pulling back like a hand before it forms a fist. Ambassador Nicole Grant was the last human to leave Velthari territory. She was a tall woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 20 years working for peace between species. She had believed that communication could solve any problem. As her ship prepared to depart from the Velthari capital, a young Velthari diplomat approached her. Running away? He mocked. Your species truly is pathetic. Nicole looked at him. She did not smile. She did not frown. Her face showed nothing at all. We are not running, she said quietly. We are getting out of the way. The young Velthari laughed. Out of the way of what? Nicole turned and walked onto her ship. She did not answer. She did not need to. In 28 days, the Velthari would understand. And by then, it would be far too late. The galaxy watched humanity's silence and wondered what it meant. Some species thought the humans had surrendered. Some thought they were planning revenge. None of them could imagine what was actually coming, because the truth was too terrible to imagine. The truth was that humanity had stopped being kind. They had stopped being patient. They had stopped being the gentle species that everyone had known. They had become something else. Something cold. Something focused. Something that would shake the galaxy to its very core. And in the darkness of space, 3,000 warships were being prepared for a mission that would change everything forever. 28 days had passed since the massacre. In that time, Dr. Claire Wynne had not slept more than a few hours. Her eyes were red, and her hands shook from too much coffee, but she had done it. Project Helios was complete. She stood in the main laboratory of the Prometheus Research Facility, surrounded by her team of exhausted scientists. Before them sat a device no larger than a car. It did not look dangerous. It looked almost simple, but inside that small machine was the power to kill a star. How many? Claire asked her assistant, a young man named Peter Walsh. 3,000 units, Peter replied. One for each ship in the fleet. The last one was finished 20 minutes ago. Claire nodded slowly. She had created the most destructive weapon in human history. Part of her wanted to destroy the plans, to pretend this had never happened. But then she remembered the faces of the children on Meridian 4. She remembered their screams. She remembered the way the Velthari had laughed. Load them onto the ships, she said quietly. We are ready. Far away, in the deep black of empty space, Admiral Kevin Price stood on the bridge of his new flagship. The ship was called Unity, and it was the largest warship humanity had ever built. Around it floated 3,000 other vessels of every size and type: warships, carriers, destroyers, and support ships. The entire military might of humanity gathered in one place. Kevin looked at the holographic display showing all the ships. He had commanded fleets before, but never anything like this. This was not a battle group. This was an extinction force. Dr. Claire Nguyen arrived on a transport shuttle. She walked onto the bridge and handed Kevin a small tablet. "The devices are installed on every ship," she said. "Each one is linked to a central command. When you give the order, they will all activate at exactly the same moment." Kevin took the tablet and looked at the activation code. Such a simple thing. Just a few numbers and letters. But pressing them would kill billions of living creatures. "Thank you, Doctor," he said. "I wish this was not necessary." Claire looked at him with hollow eyes. "So do I, Admiral. So do I." While the fleet prepared, Captain Ryan Torres was finishing his mission. He had spent 26 days sneaking through Velthari space, hiding from patrols, and mapping everything he could find. His small ship, the Horizon, was battered and low on fuel. 3 of his crew members had died when a Velthari patrol had nearly caught them. But he had the information. Every Velthari system, every military base, every population center. The complete map of an entire civilization. Ready to be erased. Ryan transmitted the final data package to Admiral Price and set course for home. As he flew through the darkness, he thought about what humanity was about to do. The Velthari had killed 10 million humans. Humanity was about to kill 97 billion Velthari. Was this justice? Was this revenge? Ryan did not know anymore. He only knew that the Velthari had started something they could not finish. The Galactic Council grew worried about humanity's silence. They sent ambassadors to Earth, demanding to know what was happening. Ambassador Nicole Grant met them in a cold gray room with no decorations and no windows. The ambassadors were from 12 different species. They represented the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. And they were all afraid, though they tried to hide it. "Ambassador Grant," said the lead envoy, a tall blue creature with 4 arms. "The galaxy is concerned. Humanity has withdrawn from all diplomatic contact. Your ships are disappearing from known space. What is happening?" Nicole looked at them one by one. She saw their fear and felt nothing. "We tried peace," she said. Her voice was flat and cold. "We built trade routes. We shared our technology. We invited other species to our worlds. We believed that kindness would be returned with kindness." She stood up and walked to the window that wasn't there, staring at the blank wall. "The Velthari murdered 10 million of our people while you watched. They broadcast it to every corner of the galaxy. They made our children's deaths into entertainment. And what did the Great Galactic Council do? Nothing. You sent no help. You offered no support. You just watched." The ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. They had no answer because there was no answer. They had done nothing, and they knew it. Nicole turned back to face them. Her eyes were like ice. "There will be no negotiation with the Velthari. There will be no peace talks. There will be no proportional response. What is coming, you cannot stop. What we are about to do, you cannot prevent. All you can do is stay out of our way." The lead envoy leaned forward. "What are you planning? You must tell us." Nicole walked to the door. She paused and looked back over her shoulder. "We are going to teach the galaxy a lesson," she said. "We are going to show every species what happens when you harm our people. And when it is over, no one will ever look at humanity the same way again." She left the room without another word. On the Unity, Admiral Kevin Price received confirmation that Captain Torres had completed his mission. He looked at the star map, showing all 43 Velthari systems, 97 billion lives, represented by small dots of light. His communications officer looked at him. "Sir, the fleet is in position." All Helios devices are armed and ready. We are waiting for your command. One people redder. Kevin thought about his daughter on Earth. She was 7 years old. She had watched the broadcast from Meridian 4. She had not spoken since. The doctor said she might never speak again. He thought about the millions of other children who had seen the same thing. He thought about the families who had lost loved ones. He thought about the screams that still echoed in his dreams every night. Set course for Velthari space, he said. All ships. We jump in 6 hours. 3,000 warships began to move. They flew in perfect formation, like a dark cloud spreading across the stars. Inside each ship, human crews prepared for what was coming. Some prayed, some cried, some felt nothing at all, but none of them hesitated. None of them questioned the mission. The Velthari had awakened something ancient and terrible in humanity, something that had been sleeping since the species first crawled out of caves on a small blue world called Earth. The predator was awake now, and it was hungry for revenge. The Velthari Dominion had existed for 12,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and defeated dozens of species. Their empire stretched across 43 star systems, home to 97 billion souls. They believed themselves to be the greatest civilization in the galaxy. They were wrong. At exactly 0600 hours Earth Standard Time, the sky over every Velthari world changed. Space itself seemed to tear open as 3,000 human warships emerged from hyperspace simultaneously. The fleet had divided perfectly, positioning ships at every single Velthari system at the same moment. On the Velthari homeworld, Sovereign Krathval was sleeping in his palace when alarms began screaming. He woke to find his generals rushing into his chamber, their scales pale with fear. What is happening? He demanded. The humans, a general gasped. They are everywhere. Every system, every world. They appeared from nowhere. Krathval felt the first cold touch of fear in his heart, but he pushed it away. The humans were weak. They had no weapons that could threaten the Dominion. Destroy them, he ordered. Send every ship we have. But it was already too late. Admiral Kevin Price stood on the bridge of the Unity, watching the Velthari homeworld on his main screen. It was a beautiful planet, with purple oceans and golden continents. 12 billion Velthari lived there. Children were being born at this very moment. Families were eating breakfast. Workers were starting their day. In 8 minutes, they would all be dead. Kevin looked at the tablet in his hand. The activation code glowed on the screen. His finger hovered over the button. For one moment, he hesitated. What he was about to do would make humanity the most feared species in the galaxy. It would change everything forever. Then he remembered the broadcast. He remembered the children of Meridian 4 being dragged from their homes. He remembered the screams that had lasted for 6 hours. He remembered the smile on Sovereign Krathval's face as he stood covered in human blood. Kevin pressed the button. Across 43 star systems, 3,000 Helios devices activated at exactly the same instant. The devices were simple in their horror. They created a cascade reaction inside a star, causing the hydrogen fusion at its core to collapse. The star would then fold in on itself, becoming a microscopic black hole that would swallow everything around it. The process took 8 minutes. Captain Ryan Torres watched from the edge of the Velthari home system. His ship, the Horizon, was positioned far enough away to survive what was coming. His crew stood behind him, staring at the view screen in silence. The Velthari sun began to change. Its yellow light flickered and shifted to orange, then to deep red. The star seemed to shrink, pulling inward like a giant taking a breath before screaming. Massive solar flares erupted from its surface, reaching toward the planets like desperate hands. "It's beautiful," whispered one of Ryan's crew members. "And horrible." Ryan did not respond. He could not look away. On the Velthari homeworld, chaos erupted. People ran through the streets as the sky turned blood red. Scientists screamed warnings that no one could hear. Military commanders gave orders that no one could follow. Families held each other as the ground began to shake. Sovereign Krathval stood on his palace balcony, watching his son die. For the first time in his life, he understood fear. Real fear. The kind of fear that the humans had felt on Meridian 4. He tried to send a message. He tried to beg for mercy. He tried to offer surrender. But there was no one listening. The humans had not come to negotiate. They had not come to fight. They had come to erase. The star collapsed. One moment, there was a sun burning in the sky. The next moment, there was nothing. Just a tiny point of infinite darkness where a star used to be. The darkness began to grow, pulling everything toward it. Light bent around it. Space twisted and screamed. The first planet to fall was a small moon at the edge of the system. It simply vanished, pulled into the singularity like water down a drain. Then the next planet fell. And the next. The Velthari homeworld lasted longest. 12 billion people had exactly 3 minutes to understand what was happening before their world was swallowed by darkness. There were no screams. There was no time for screams. One moment the planet existed, and the next it was gone forever. Sovereign Krathval's final transmission was intercepted by human ships. It was a single word, spoken in a voice filled with disbelief and terror. The word was, "Why?" But the humans did not answer. They did not need to explain. The Velthari already knew why. Across 43 star systems, the same scene repeated. 43 suns died. 43 civilizations were erased. 97 billion Velthari ceased to exist in 8 minutes. When it was over, Admiral Kevin Price sat in his command chair and stared at the empty space where the Velthari homeworld had been. There was nothing left. No debris. No survivors. No trace that a mighty empire had ever existed there. His communications officer spoke in a whisper. "Admiral, all Helios devices have completed their cycles. The Velthari Dominion no longer exists." Kevin nodded slowly. He thought he would feel something. Satisfaction. Horror. Guilt. Something. But he felt empty. Completely empty. "Send a message to Earth," he said. "Tell them it is done." On the horizon, Captain Ryan Torres finally looked away from the view screen. His crew was crying. Some were hugging each other. Some had fallen to their knees. They had just witnessed the death of an entire species. "Take us home," Ryan said quietly. "There's nothing more to see here." As the human fleet began to withdraw, the galaxy fell silent. Every species that had monitored the attack was frozen in shock. They had just watched humanity commit the ultimate act of destruction. They had just watched the gentle, peaceful humans erase 97 billion lives in less than 10 minutes. Nothing would ever be the same again. The empty spaces where Velthari systems had been became dark monuments to human rage. No ships flew through them. No one dared to enter those cursed regions of space. They became known simply as the graves, silent warnings to anyone who might think about harming humanity. And in the blackness between stars, the microscopic black holes continued to spin, slowly fading over billions of years. The only tombstones for a species that had made the fatal mistake of believing that kindness meant weakness. 1 week after the extinction of the Velthari Dominion, Ambassador Nicole Grant walked into the Great Chamber of the Galactic Assembly. This was the most important political body in known space. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive room, sitting in rows that curved upward like a giant bowl. Every eye watched Nicole as she walked to the central platform. The chamber was completely silent. No one whispered. No one moved. They simply stared at the human woman who represented a species that had just killed 97 billion people. Nicole stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled representatives. She saw fear in their eyes. She saw horror. She saw something else, too. Something she had never seen before when aliens looked at humans. She saw respect. "Representatives of the Galactic Assembly," Nicole began. Her voice was calm and steady. "I come before you today not to apologize, not to explain, and not to ask for forgiveness. I come to make certain that every species in this room understands what happened and why." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "1 month ago, the Velthari Dominion attacked our colony on Meridian 4. They did not attack our military. They did not target our government. They murdered 10 million civilians, including children, while broadcasting their deaths across the galaxy for entertainment. Nicole's voice hardened. We sent messages to this assembly begging for help. We asked you to condemn the attack. We asked you to support us. And what did you do? Nothing. You watched our people die, and you did nothing. Several representatives looked away in shame. Others simply stared at the floor. The Velthari believed that our kindness was weakness, Nicole continued. They believed that our desire for peace meant we could not fight. They were wrong. Humanity chose peace because we understood what war really meant. We held back our true capabilities because we did not want to become what we became. She looked directly at the assembly's chairman, a large creature with silver fur and many eyes. The Velthari are gone now. Every world, every ship, every single member of their species. We did not capture them. We did not negotiate with them. We erased them from existence. 97 billion lives ended in 8 minutes. The chamber remained silent. No one dared to speak. Let me be clear about what this means, Nicole said. Humanity does not seek war. We do not desire conquest. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want exactly what we have always wanted. Peace, trade, cooperation, and friendship. She leaned forward, and her voice dropped to something almost like a whisper, though everyone could hear it clearly. But our patience is not infinite, our kindness is not weakness, and our mercy is not guaranteed. If any species ever harms our people again, if any civilization ever attacks our colonies, if anyone ever thinks that we will simply accept the murder of our children. She paused. They will share the fate of the Velthari. Nicole straightened up. That is all I have to say. Humanity extends its hand in friendship to every species in this chamber. We hope you will take it. We hope we can build a future together based on mutual respect and understanding. She turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, she stopped and looked back over her shoulder. But never forget what we are capable of. Never forget the 43 empty spaces where the Velthari used to live. And never, ever test us again. She left without another word. On Earth, Admiral Kevin Price retired from the fleet. He went home to his family, to his daughter who still had not spoken since the broadcast from Meridian 4. He sat with her every day, reading her stories and holding her hand. One afternoon, 3 months after the extinction of the Velthari, she finally spoke. Daddy, she said, her small voice barely a whisper. Are the bad aliens gone? Kevin pulled her into his arms, tears streaming down his face. Yes, sweetheart. They're gone. They can never hurt anyone again. Good, she said. And then she fell asleep in his arms. Peaceful for the first time since the nightmare began. Dr. Claire Ningwen returned to her work at the Prometheus Research Facility. The Helios devices were dismantled, and their designs were locked away in the most secure vault humanity had ever built. Claire hoped they would never be needed again. She hoped that the horror of what she had created would be enough to prevent any future attacks, but she kept the knowledge in her mind, just in case. Captain Ryan Torres tried to return to normal life. He bought a small house on a quiet colony world and tried to forget what he had seen. But every night, he dreamed of dying stars and vanishing worlds. He dreamed of the Velthari sun collapsing. He dreamed of Sovereign Krathval's final word. Why? Ryan knew the answer. Because they killed our children. Because they thought we were weak. Because they gave us no choice. But knowing the answer did not make the dreams stop. President Daniel Morrison addressed humanity 1 year after the extinction. He stood in front of a monument that had been built on Meridian 4, where the colony had been rebuilt. 10 million names were carved into black stone, a reminder of those who had died. We did something terrible, Daniel said to the gathered crowd. We became something terrible. We took 97 billion lives in revenge for 10 million. That math does not balance. It never will. He looked at the names carved in stone. But we also sent a message to the galaxy. We told them that humanity will not be victimized. We will not be prey. We will not allow our children to be murdered for entertainment. If peace requires strength, then we will be strong. If survival requires darkness, then we will embrace that darkness. He turned to face the crowd. Let us hope that we never have to use that darkness again. Let us hope that the galaxy has learned its lesson. Let us hope that the Velthari were the last species foolish enough to underestimate humanity. Across the galaxy, that hope proved true. In the centuries that followed, no species ever attacked a human colony. No civilization ever threatened human space. The 43 empty regions of space that had once been the Velthari dominion served as eternal warnings. A new phrase entered the diplomatic vocabulary of every species. Remember Meridian 4. It meant, do not provoke the humans. It meant, do not mistake their kindness for weakness. It meant, do not test the species that killed 100 billion souls because 10 million of their children died screaming. Humanity went back to being kind. They went back to building bridges and making friends. They went back to exploring new worlds and helping younger species grow. They were generous and patient and peaceful, just as they had always been. But somewhere deep inside every human heart, sleeping quietly, was the cold, dark thing that had awakened when the Velthari broadcast began. It slept because there was no need for it to wake. It slept because the galaxy had learned its lesson. But it was always there, waiting, ready. And every species in the galaxy knew it. That was enough.